Face to face, hand to hand, film to film.
Welcome to another episode of Film to Film. My name is Iñaki Liñero and I'm here with my good friend James Shergan. First of all, before we start, I wanted to apologize for the long-awaited episode that everyone probably has not been able to sleep. Given that Mr. Shergan decided to go across the pond to hang out with some frogs, and on the other hand, this is actually the second time we're trying to record this episode after he got back. So, yeah. Anyways, welcome back, James.
Thank you. I've been back a while now, so this episode has been long awaited.
Indeed,
much anticipated.
Like I've been hearing, from different areas. It's like, hey man, when is the next film to film episode coming up?
Yeah, I've been getting mysterious text messages from someone named Patuzu saying, "Hey, when's my time to shine?" I'm waiting for my episode.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're back. So you're welcome, audience. And today we decided to go back into the classic, and probably one of the most important films to watch in horror. Mm-hmm. Some folks would say that you need to watch this, and that is The Exorcist.
Yeah. Probably along with Halloween, the most classical horror films that we've brought onto the podcast.
Yeah. A true blockbuster then, back in 1973, and today perhaps almost every single movie that you watch that involves demonic possessions, they were heavily inspired by this film. So yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll talk about whether we think this is the best or one of the best at some point. But yeah, excited to talk about this.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'll just throw in the quick summary. I mean, if you have not seen this movie, watch it. But we'll still throw in the quick summary. When a 12-year-old girl is possessed by a mysterious entity, her mother seeks help of two priests to save her. What do we think?
Yeah. I'd say that's about right.
Yeah, I mean, it sums up the movie.
Yeah.
Is this your first time watching it, or when was the first time you saw it, and what do you think about this movie?
Yeah, so this is my third time seeing it. I probably saw it for the first time, 5 or 6 years ago. So it was pretty late in my film watching, so just decided to knock off classics. For me personally, horror movie watching is something I go in spurts, and so I didn't get to it on a couple of my initial spurts, and then finally I decided to check off that box because it's just too important a film not to watch. I liked it the first time, but I really think that I really began to appreciate the film on another level the second and third time viewing it. The second time was maybe half a year ago when I was doing a watch of everything from Friedkin, so watched a lot of his classic films, and then this most recent time for the episode. So I really enjoy the film. I think it's probably perhaps the most well-rounded horror classic of this era, just in terms of bringing all kinds of stuff to the table in terms of sound design, score, acting, etc. But I'm sure we'll get more into that as we go through the episode.
Would you be this nudie kind of person, be like, this is an elevated horror?
No, I try not to use those terms, but it is interesting because this was a film that I believe was pretty acclaimed at the time, which is quite unusual for a horror film.
Indeed. This film actually was nominated for a bunch of Oscars. I think it was the first horror film nominated for Best Picture, if I'm not mistaken. And it actually won Best Screenplay in the Academy Awards. So um, again, the Academy Award is extremely stingy with horror films. So the fact that they provided that says something about the film.
Yeah, also tends to be very prudish and stuff that really pushes the boundaries, which I think this film certainly did at the time. I mean, it would be rare. And I mean, I just looked it up now, and yeah, it was nominated for 10 Oscars and won 2 for Best Sound and Best Screenplay. So.
Oh yeah, Best Sound too. Which, I mean, that's one really strong area of the film as well, the sound.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, in my case, the first time I watched this movie was back in 2008. It was it was an undergrad, and actually was on a class, on a media literacy class, or no, actually it was critical literacy class. But it was focused on film and the horror genre. So obviously we had to watch this because it was one of your classic American horrors. And I forgot everything about what was talked in that class. And I never kept notes on it, which is really unfortunate. But what I will say is that when watching it again, actually I got a lot of newfound appreciation for this movie. That, I mean, I didn't have as much when I first saw it. Now, you, James, and I actually have watched for this viewing. We've watched 2 different versions of the film.
That's right. Yeah.
You watched the director's cut, which came out in the year 2000, if I'm not mistaken, and I watched the theatrical cut, the 1973 theatrical cut, which is the one that Netflix is showing. Neither of us watched the TV cut, which is good.
Yeah, because that would have been probably, I mean, stuff would have been cut.
Yeah, a very sad showing. And, there's some interesting differences. Not many. But it's something that I noticed when I watched it on Netflix, which was that I did not get the spider walk. And
yeah.
So I wanted to knock that out right now since...
But you've seen the director's cut before with the spider walk.
Yeah, I have. But I still want to knock it out and saying, to talk about it right now, since it's one thing that I didn't see. Also, the other part of the that I didn't see is that the director's cut has an ending where the detective ends up, the lieutenant, I think, ends up meeting up with the new priest.
Yep.
And while the other one ends with the new priest looking ominously at the stairs in Georgetown, D.C.
Yeah. I mean, this is secretly one of the big, or secretly or not secretly, this might be one of the biggest DC movies of the time, which is the city you're based in. So it's kind of an interesting thing, interesting setting to put it in for sure. But yeah, I mean, I was just looking this up, and the director's cut is a full 10 minutes longer, which is a fair bit of time. I am curious. I mean, I'm reading probably the same thing you are on Wikipedia. I'm curious at the other parts that were added in. Obviously, they've been kind of fussing around the edges of the film for quite some time, but yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah. What's also interesting is that the director's cut is called the director's cut when William Friedkin actually was the one who chose not to keep the spider in the when it was released in theaters, and the writer William Peter Blatty was actually wanted to keep that. So it's one of those weird things. But anyways, actually I'll go a little bit on the details on the production of here. The film was directed by William Friedkin, also director of French Connection and many other important films. In fact, he had won the French his previous movie was the French Connection. Which means that this was sort of not a passion project, but there is a theory that whenever a director wins an Oscar, in the next movie they might go crazy, because they have that directorial credit.
Mm-hmm.
And then the movie was based on the book with the same name, The Exorcist, published in 1971 by William Peter Blatty, who ended up also writing the script for the film, which was actually a trend during the early 70s,
Right.
where you would have novelists working together with a production company to basically release a novel right before or a few years before the film. This happened.
It's kind of like writing a book before you run for president.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I in a way, it's the kind of work where the production company almost funds the novelist to do this, to have a hype on the novel and then the film. It was first done. This was first done by The Godfather, and that was a complete success. And then it was done with this film. And although at first Warner Brothers thought this would be a complete failure because the movie took twice as long as originally intended, it cost twice as much as originally intended, and
yeah. So I mean, they did have a little bit of what you're talking about, of the director going a little bit, off script, so to speak.
Exactly. Basically, it was just way more expensive, way everything, and additionally was a rated R film, and they had to really fight for that because this would have been rated X or whatever it was back then.
Yeah.
So all of that, and at the end, it ended up being a blockbuster success.
Like massive. Yeah.
Exactly. Which is interesting because horrors are not generally like. Prior to this film, horror had gone towards the category of more like blaxploitation or like just considered bad. But here you had a blockbuster success, critically acclaimed movie. You had almost all the elements.
Right. I mean, it's like, to talk a little bit about the era, too, it's like, if you look at the horror films that came before this, it's stuff like Rosemary's Baby and stuff like that, it feels like it's from a very different time, in the sense of, like, film, like, Exorcist just feels much more modern than those films. And Rosemary's Baby, I think, is a great film, but it's like, in terms of bringing it into more of a contemporary era, I think Exorcist feels much more up-to-date than those films.
What do you mean by that?
Just in terms of maybe just like the sheer shocking graphicness of some of it too. Rosemary's Baby and is very psychologically based, and like the pacing of it and stuff I think is a little different and slower than The Exorcist. I think it's very well done. I think it's a very well directed film. And you think about like horror in the 50s and 60s with like kind of like the cheesy outer space stuff and things like that. It's like they feel dated in a way that I feel like The Exorcist feels a little more contemporary. But, 70s are one of my favorite decades for film, so perhaps my favorite decade period. So I do have a natural bias towards films from this era.
Yeah, I mean, you might be right. This was the era. This was sort of post the full Red Scare era, where you would have, because 1950s, 1960s was all about, invasions from unknown creatures. And you had some really good movies then. The Invasion of Bodies, The Body Snatchers.
Yeah. Absolutely. The original The Thing, The Fly, that sort of stuff.
Well, but then in the 60s you had the Night of the Living Dead. Mm-hmm. So you had some I would say you had some modern films as well. In a certain way, but yes, the concept of that era prior to this film was more about an unknown that would or that basically monsters that would invade, either assimilating with people or things like that. And here, this film actually takes a little bit of that in the concept that you got an exorcism, but the solution in this one is not a battle. It's not gloom and doom, because depending on the films of that era, they were gloom and doom. But the solution is actually a very conservative solution, which is religion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's, I don't know. In a way, it's. I think one of the most effective things to me about this film, and I don't know if I would call it modern or not. I'm not sure, but what's effective is the concept that, you have a little girl who, innocent-looking little girl who, out of nowhere, is possessed by the devil. I know you mentioned Pazuzu earlier, but this film doesn't even say that. In this film, it's the devil. It's the only thing that is referenced. And there's something terrifying about that, that this is a non-religious family. It's possessed by the devil. Science cannot fix this. Only this random ass priest who is in Iraq and a bunch of other places can help with this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And they all die, the priests. Oh, spoiler alert.
Well, I think this film is pretty unspoilable at this point in time. Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I do think there's a number of reasons why this film works, but I think certainly that is one of them. I think, so one thing I did do in preparation for this podcast, too, is I watched a couple of the films that were directly inspired by this. So I watched one Italian Exorcist ripoff called The Antichrist by Alberto De Martino. And I also watched Abby, which is a blaxploitation Exorcist ripoff. Exorcist, by the way, kind of a film that really shocked studio executives in the sense that it appealed to black audiences in a way that they didn't think was possible. Mm-hmm. They thought that they had to make more black-specific films in order to get that audience. So, landmark film in that way as well. But one thing that really does set The Exorcist apart from those two films, as well as a few others that kind of riff on it, is it takes itself very seriously, especially the character's faith, specifically Jason Miller's. Mm-hmm. And so it really... it doesn't treat it like a joke, and I think those character-based aspects and stuff like that just give it a really, really rich text to dig into that I think the other films that come after it don't really come close to reaching. I do like a lot of those films. I think they have some interesting things, and some of them are good fun. But The Exorcist, I do think, is a considerably better film than most of the ripoffs that came behind it.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, if there's something to say about this, the film is that it's fascinating in it deals with the horror, of course, of the possession, but also with I want to say real life horrors as well. I mean, this movie's gloomy. This the two main characters. Chris McNeil, portrayed by Ellen Burstyn, and Dr. Damien Karras, portrayed by Jason Miller. These are very unhappy people. The McNeil, she's a famous actor, but she's by herself with her daughter. The husband is never there. In fact, it's unclear whether or not they are still together or separate. But what is clear is that the man cannot even bother to call his daughter at her birthday. And so you have the daughter too, which is played by Reagan, which is played by Linda Blair. Yep. The daughter is a very lonely girl. With an acting mother that leaves in at night or in the morning or whatever because she has to work acting. And so the mother and the daughter are really alone despite her fame. And then Dr. Damien is basically, the priest, Father Karras, is, a priest that has a mother living in a different city, not too close to where he lives, living in bad conditions, and he feels guilty because he feels like he has abandoned her. And then she gets sick, ends up in the hospital, and ends up dying, and he is unable to get her to a good hospital, so she's at a shitty public hospital for crazy people or whatever, and all that. And his uncle even blames him for becoming a priest instead of becoming a famous or a well-paid psychologist, private psychologist. So it is the person who literally is the psychologist for Catholics, and he himself is doubting the existence of God, which is probably one of the hardest things to deal with as a Catholic priest. Right.
And I mean, like he does a great job. Both actors do. Mm-hmm. Burstyn as well as Jason Miller are great in those roles. And yeah, I mean, I think you summed them up well. Those two roles and like the texture and stuff that they bring to it, it's just very well established. The character building and stuff like that goes into it. Mm-hmm. That really help to make those things feel very lifelike.
By the way, this is a weird tangent, but did you know that the studio did not feel too comfortable hiring Jason Miller because he had never been on a film? He was he was an actor for theater, but not for film.
Yeah. I've seen interviews with Friedkin. Friedkin will endlessly take credit for casting Jason Miller. Because they saw him in a play, and then they decided to pay the actor Stacy Keach the full amount of money just to screw off, and gave the role to Jason Miller instead. Right. So yeah, I mean it's clear why he's perfect for the role, but
they were considering other actors like Jack Nicholson. Can you imagine Jack Nicholson in this role?
And Marlon Brando, I think for that might have been Maron's part.
Yeah, I think it was for Maron's part.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean Jack Nicholson, it's a totally different movie, and it's a much worse movie. I mean I love Jack Nicholson, but like the sort of like depressive state that Jason Miller is able to really emote, like that really helps to make the film.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean. It would have been a really weird movie with Jack Nicholson.
I mean, it probably would have been like highly entertaining, and probably still would have made a lot of money. But would it have been? Would it have been as great as it is? I doubt it.
Yeah, me too. And then of course.
That being said, I would love to see that film too, if it existed. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. I was gonna say for the lead actress. Also, they I think the studio didn't want they did not want Ellen Burstyn, but a lot of people had turned down the movie. For example, they had I think they had asked Hepburn. How do I say her name? Sorry.
Let's see.
I'm just like. No. The one in that Rome movie. Audrey. I want to say it's Audrey.
Oh, Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah,
okay.
Audrey Hepburn.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, Audrey Hepburn. They asked her, and she had moved to Italy already, so she was like, "Sure, I'll do it if you film in Italy."
She should have appeared in some of the Exorcist ripoffs in Italy.
I know. Well, she was too important for that, though.
I know she was. Yeah.
But I mean, that also would have been distracting, because Hepburn also has due to her roles in other films. Like I think she already was too known. I think it's kind of nice in this movie that almost none of the actors are well known. So
I mean, Burstyn was well known, but she can disappear into a role that like a huge movie superstar like Audrey Hepburn cannot.
Exactly.
So I mean, yeah, I think I agree with what you're getting at.
Yeah. Anyways, so one thing this movie, as we mentioned, for sound, this film won an Oscar. Now, what are your thoughts about the sounds in this film?
Oh, I think it's perfect. I think the sound design on this film is super good. Like, I mean, there are so many memorable sounds, like the Iraq stuff and like just like the swirling, and like you just feel the atmosphere and how cold that room is. And I mean, like, I'm sure, like, I think I heard that they made the room super cold too. So I mean, like, Friedkin was kind of a madman working during this film, but like just the way that they do the sound. I mean, one of the most memorable sounds for me is even just like the medical procedures that are happening and like those machine whirring. I mean, I'm not the first person to make this point, but has a very, very industrial feel to it. So I just love everything that the sound brings to it. I think that Oscar is super well deserved. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the sound definitely does a lot of work in this movie, especially when it comes to making it scary. Like, will I say that I got scared with this film myself? No. But that's because, like, I already knew all the cliches, unfortunately. Right. But with that said, like, there are moments where you do get tense, and there are moments where suspense does happen and you know, when watching it with all the lights off and everything, you know, you get some goosebumps, and the sound effects is a big part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like horror films too are always kind of a tricky rewatch, because like when you know what's coming too, it's like hard. I think the first time I watched this film, I was, you know, moderately scared, but second and third time, really not at all. And it's just because, like, once you know the beats and stuff like that, your second and third time watching a horror film are very different. But I do remember, like, my parents, when I was younger, like, raving about a couple films that were just, like, really, really scary. My mom in particular. And, like, The Exorcist seems to have an incredibly scarring impact on her. And like enough so that it felt like she would never watch another scary movie. I'm not sure that she has watched a horror film since The Exorcist when she saw it. I think we had determined possibly on the re-release in 1979. So, you know, it certainly scared the shit out of people when it was released.
Oh yeah, no. There were claims of some claims that people, like that a woman had a miscarriage because she was so scared at the film, and someone else had a heart attack. Now, I don't know how much that is true, but what I do know is that that those kind of headlines are the headlines that will get people flocking to watch the film.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it was all planned. I don't know.
Yeah. So either way, you know, important thing. Another thing about this movie that just makes it so good beyond the sound is the score.
Yes.
You know, you got it. This film basically pulls a classic. I mean, when we talked about Halloween last year, we talked about how that score is sort of like ubiquitous with Halloween like moments. This one sort of does the same thing. Like when I think of a horror film, and I think of like background music, you know, that main score is just in your head.
Yeah, it's beautiful, but also very haunting. Yeah, I mean, it's like worthy of. I mean, it holds its own against like some of those Italian tracks too. Yeah, it's a really good one, and it's almost underused in the film. Like they don't even go to it that much. Like if this is an Italian film, they would have been playing that every 15 minutes or something.
No, for sure.
Yeah. One other point I wanted to make on the sound, and this is kind of half-assed internet research, but I have heard that Friedkin, when the film was showing too, was going around to different theaters and dropping in on screenings and making sure the volume was like appropriately high and like shouting at them if it was not and making them change it. So it kind of shows Friedkin was a crazy person, and I would not want to be working in a theater and being shouted at for those reasons, but B, that it's like he was very, very specific on the conditions that he wanted his audience to be in to watch it.
Okay, yeah, he sounds a little bit like the master of suspense.
Hitchcock.
Yep, He sounds a little bit like Hitchcock. 'Cause Hitchcock was also very. He micromanaged some releases
Psycho.
of films. Psycho.
Yeah.
2% Psycho. When it comes to filming, and let's jump into the director.
Sure.
Friedkin, he, so we mentioned, he did French Connection, he did other films. He definitely wanted to, he was a Hitchcock wannabe, which worked out really well for the film. But I personally do not like that style as directing. So by that I mean that he really tortured the shit out of his actors.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
I mean, for certain scenes, they would use pulleys. For example, they had a pulley pulled by the hips, Briston, and later it was found that she got injured for life because of it. He would use a gun with blanks, shoot it to basically scare the hell out of the actors to get their reactions.
Yep, and not tell them it was coming too.
Exactly.
which otherwise that would ruin the reaction.
Apparently, there's like for one of the priest actors, he didn't look. To him, he didn't look like concerned enough, so he slapped him.
Yeah. I've heard Friedkin tell that story too. He's like he was not getting the take right, and so I said, "Do you trust me?" And he's like, "Yes, I do." And then I just socked him in the face, and then I said, "Action."
Yeah.
I mean, the guy is. I mean, we can laugh about it now, but I mean, it's like very abusive behavior, certainly at the time.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that, especially when you're injuring your employee for life. But at the same time, yes, sure. You got the reactions. I don't know if they were necessary. I think a good director should be able to get their actors to put their performance without having to physically abuse them.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, Friedkin is always, especially during this era, he was like, I mean, you know French Connection. You've seen French Connection, I'm sure. But, I mean, like, it's famous for that car chase scene, which is, like, obviously done in a way that's, like, totally reckless and dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely thrilling scene. But, like, at this time, I mean, like, he was certainly one of those directors. And I think he's mellowed out with age. If you hear him talk about, like, he would have done some stuff differently on some of these films. Probably French Connection, Exorcist, and The Car Chase and To Live and Die in L.A. would be some of those. But, you know, it's like, it is hard to argue with the results that he does get in the film. But, yeah, I mean, do you love it? Not really.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I point it out, but at the same time, I'm like, is that a sign of a good director or not? I mean, and the same goes with Kubrick when, you know, like when you talk about The Shining and the 1,000 takes that he did with the female star, forget the name now. I'm really bad with names.
Shelley Duvall, yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, I don't know.
I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Kubrick, too, because in some ways, Kubrick's name was briefly attached to the project. I think they Blatty wanted him or something. But in some ways, they are kind of similar in that sense. In other ways, they're very different. Friedkin is kind of famously like a one-take sort of director, not really perfectionist. And I don't know if at this point he was putting a little bit more time into it, because like the amount of polish that is in The Exorcist, like the cutting and the editing and stuff, it's very well put together. So I would be shocked if he was doing sort of his one-take style that he become kind of well known for later on during this film.
I mean,
Kubrick,
maybe there
on the
were
other hand,
scenes
like
where there were one takes, and there were other scenes that.
I mean, or maybe the cast is so good, like Burstyn and Miller and Linda Blair and Lee J. Cobb are just so good that maybe one take is all they needed. I don't know. I mean, he has no doubt an extremely talented cast to work with in this film.
It's true. All right, so and then the last thing I wanted to mention before going to, you know, maybe important scenes is the makeup, Reagan's makeup. And actually, not just the makeup, not just the makeup, but perhaps the special effects. So you mentioned the room and how they basically turned that into a freezer. You know, that really sets the scene, especially where you can see the breath of everyone there. And then Regan, you know, having her turn from, you know, this cute little girl to this just fucked up monster. They do a really good job with the makeup. You know, as at first her just looking sickly, dehydrated, to then having, you know, just a messed up face. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's groundbreaking makeup at the time. I mean, for me, I think I'm probably fairly forgiving on makeup and stuff, but I mean, like, it holds up. I mean, not to mention, Reagan is probably the most obvious one, but not to mention Max von Sydow, who is only like 42 or 43 when he did this film, playing Marin. I mean, like, and so, like, he looks like he's like 85 and about to die. And like, I mean, he kind of was like, for the rest of his career, he only died recently, a few years ago. I mean, he kind of was like an 85-year-old guy waiting to die for like all of the rest of the films. I mean, he had quite a career. I mean, like, he was in like, he played Death in like The Seventh Seal, I think. He like was in like a bunch of Spielberg films. I mean, like, it's very interesting. But yeah, I mean, the makeup job on him, I think, is impeccable as well.
Yeah, that's true. So I forgot about that. And it's interesting because, like, nowadays you watch some movies and that shit is done through CGI, and it's like, you know, the aging thing, like, literally with Marin, he really just worked out really well with just makeup. I mean, the guy looked 80, and then also adding the acting, the way he acted, the way he talked and everything was of an 80-year-old man.
Yeah, really good. I mean, like, that's one thing that when we talked about The Irishman, that the technology, amazing technology, works well, except when they move. And then it's like, why is this 35-year-old moving like they're 75?
Exactly. So yeah, now we're going to jump into scenes. So, you know, the movie begins, this movie is interesting because it begins in Iraq. And it begins with Father Marin doing some, you know, like, excavations and stuff like that. And it takes a while before the film goes into what you're expecting it's going to be about. Yet it sets the mood, even though you're in a complete different country. And I mean, this was shot in Mosul, in Hatra, I think how it's pronounced. But I mean, you got amazing scenery with these ruins, the folks around him, like in the city itself, Mosul, just the bazaars and all that, and it's and I mean, you're in a different country, but you get to see a little bit of that culture, and it ends with him going back and seeing the statue of this thing. Again, this film doesn't tell you what it is. We later learn it's in the second and third film, it's Pazuzu. And this dogs fighting and just this droning sound coming in. And what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I mean, controversial scene, but personally, I'm very on board with it. I mean, it's interesting. We talked about Kubrick. Kind of reminds me in a little ways of like 2001: Space Odyssey opening with the apes and stuff. Just in the sense that, like, could you remove it from the movie and the film would still work plot wise? Yes. But does it add something to the movie? In my opinion, in both cases, yes, absolutely. I feel like it really establishes this film and the demon villain entity as just like very, very elemental, and it kind of brings it to epic proportions. Because like the scope at which we view it beyond that first 15 minutes is much, much more intimate. So it kind of just like kind of gives it this mythic proportions that we're working on. And yeah, I mean, not to go back to the sound design too much, but like the way they designed the sound and the atmosphere of that opening, it's not really dialogue based either. Yeah, I really do like the way that it opens.
Yeah, no, sure. And I mean, this is a side comment on it. God, it's refreshing seeing a developing country without that yellow filter. So, like if you, whenever you watch a movie today, like, oh, we're in a developing country, we're going to put a yellow filter onto it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just great location shooting.
Yeah, like they don't have the filter. It looks, and you actually get to basically feel that it's an old place, but it feels like being in the old world. And by old world, I mean like in Europe, but also like Iraq. Like all of this is the old world. It's whether it's Europe, Iraq, or whatever. It's in a way the same to me in the sense that like beyond the money part, we're talking about ancient things as far as we understand, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, after all, Iraq is the foundation of Western civilization is Iraq. Like the Tigris and the Euphrates is right there. That's where he is at. And just knowing that also gives you that context of this demon is older than anything. It's older than even the Catholic Church and Jesus. This demon is old. This isn't from Iraq, and then you go into the modern world. Beautiful neighborhood of Georgetown in DC.
Yeah. Let me ask you, how much of a I mean, we talked about the opening, but how much of a DC film do you see this as?
I mean, most of the scenes are indoors, right? Mm-hmm. Just like most movies, which means that they were filmed in New York or somewhere else. But all the outside scenes are in Georgetown. Like it's Georgetown through and through. Now, DC is kind of an interesting city because every neighborhood has its own flair. And Georgetown is one of the more, I would say, picturesque kind of city, kind of neighborhoods, in that the buildings are really old. I mean, we're talking about a colonial looking buildings. Mm-hmm. I don't know if all of them are authentically colonial, but and because of that, I think that's part of the value of that neighborhood, or the real estate value, if you will, like having that picturesque concept of these row houses that are all really old, and the film. I mean, when I saw her walking on, I think it was 36, or I want to say it was 36. I walked there actually this weekend, and it looks the same. It's right there. It was filmed where she was. When she was walking home, scared, during that cold winter day, walking towards the house, that's where she was.
Yeah. And the Exorcist steps are also kind of famous, right?
Right. The steps, they became famous thanks to the film. I mean, these are the stairs that connect Prospect with M Street. Mm-hmm. That I think they were built by a railroad company or a tram company before. But yeah, they were not that famous before. But after the film, I mean, if you're on Google Maps and you look up Exorcist stairs, it'll tell you where they are. It's a tourist.
Are there like some 1-star reviews? They're like, they're actually just stairs, overrated.
They're too steep.
Yeah, not very good acting. Ellen Burstyn, overrated.
I was reading somewhere that apparently when they were shooting the film, tons of folks, especially college students, because that's Georgetown University is right there, would just like go to the houses and watch the stunt performer fall down the stairs. He did like a few times, so they were just like watching fall. They put some padding, but I bet that fall still hurt like hell.
Yeah, I mean, and it sounds like Friedkin was safety last.
No, they had to put padding. I mean, without padding.
Well, yeah.
Anyway,
but I mean, like, the fact that he injured people during the set. I mean, like it seems like he is prioritizing getting his film to look good over
right,
like safety. Yeah.
Right. Oh, hold on, I was gonna say, we sometimes crap on contemporary films or right now, but stunt artists or stunt performers still get injured today.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
And they still do crazy stunts and they die. I think the latest John Wick film, I don't know if the one that came out or the one that's coming out later, but there was a stunt performer who died in the shooting of that film.
Oh, damn. So, I didn't know that.
So, I mean, they're still putting themselves at risk. So,
no doubt. No
yeah.
doubt.
So,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Apparently, actually, it sucks to work with, what's it called? The Transformer guy.
Michael Bay?
Yeah. Yeah, apparently Bay really beats up his stunt performers. Like, not himself, but, like...
Yeah, puts them through the ringer.
Yeah. So back to it. I don't know. Anyways, so yes. Still, though, the DC, I think the film does a good job establishing the...
Mm-hmm.
Not the city. This is where I focus on Georgetown, because the entire movie is there. And that makes sense, because Georgetown also... since Georgetown University is there, which is the Jesuit school, it is a very Catholic area of the city. You hear the bells when you're there from the Catholic, from
Interesting.
The church. So there is a meaning behind it.
Yeah, so that's no doubt intentional in the case of this film. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and it's interesting also how Father Karras, his mother is in New York City. Mm-hmm. And you can see sort of that the contrast between Georgetown, which is a wealthy neighborhood too, and New York, where his mother lives, where you see like children jumping on a broken car, a bunch of swear words like graffitied all over the place, and
right. It's only a brief scene in New York, but it feels very. You can tell it's New York. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, a few years away from the New York Ripper, but close.
I mean, it looks disgusting as it is, but it's sort of fascinating, right? Because to me, in the sense that like the priest works in a place that looks wealthy, and in fact, I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, we never think about how wealthy or not wealthy priests are. And then you realize, oh, this guy's like really poor. I mean, his mom lives in this like really small, shabby apartment, cannot even afford a nursing home.
So it's almost like he's, in an odd way, kind of a service worker working in like a wealthy part of the city.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, I mean, that's a big contrast between the two main characters.
Yeah.
Karras is his apartment is actually a small like room, and that's it.
Very shabby, yeah.
While what's
Chris McNeil.
McNeil is in a very large house with multiple floors and servants.
Right.
Yeah, and planning to buy a horse for her daughter after they moved from DC.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of evidence upper class, for sure. I mean, she's also a famous actor. I mean, like, that's an interesting detail that they put in there. Like, the way that people react to her and stuff like that. It's like they know who she is.
Mm-hmm. So, for me, one of the scenes that was very powerful was when he actually visits his mother at the mental institution. Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts about it, or you want me to go a little bit more into detail?
Why don't you go into more detail?
All right. So basically, the set in the scene is this is the second time he visits his mom. Because the first time he went to her apartment. Second time, he gets there because his uncle called him, and once you get there, the uncle almost blames him for not being able to pay for a better place. And as he looks at this room full of women, and I think in different beds, and his mother is all the way at the back of the room. So he gets in, and all these women like get up, and they're like, "Father, please help me," because he's dressed as a priest, and they sort of like all of them try to like touch him and grab him as he's trying to avoid them, almost as they were ghosts. And it's a very sad scene because these are all abandoned elderly folks, and they just want someone to talk to, especially a priest in this case. And then he talks to his mother, who blames him for, she's like, why did you put me here? And then she starts talking in Greek, which I don't know what she's saying, but
yeah, right. I mean, interesting to make him Greek too. I mean, it's sort of an unusual choice. I feel like the more standard choice would be Italian.
Yeah, but I mean, did that scene strike you at all, or
for sure? I mean, yeah, I mean, it's interesting that they even put these scenes there, because I mean, like, it's like not anything to do with the possession and stuff, but it totally works. I mean, it's just like parallel storylines going on. I mean, it's great set and very depressing, but yeah, I mean, Jason Miller, great actor, or perfect for the role, really. So yeah, I mean,
well, it adds a little bit onto the theme of his character, who's losing his faith. I mean, this is, I'm not sure if it was before or after him talking with the head of the church, the head of the
I think it's after,
where he's already questioning his faith. And this scene, as well as other scenes where homeless people ask him for money or things like that, and they all sort of look up to him while he is sort of almost hiding from folks. I think it makes the scene powerful. It also makes, to me, it also makes it almost as a horror film, because in the sense that these old women are almost ghosts, are almost. It's both sad, but also they grab onto him, just pulling him down as he's just trying to get to his mother, which is later repeated in a dream. I don't know. To me, that's it was a scene that I definitely had in my notes, and I was like, it worked with me.
Good scene, yeah. Probably the one sort of scene that I found to be really impactful, that was also not as directly related to Pazuzu, was the scene with Burstyn and Lee J. Cobb, where he comes in for coffee and he's the cop, and then she's like, he seems like he might be ready to go, and she offers him another cup and he says yes, and then they kind of have like that moment. Like, is it necessary for the plot? Maybe slightly, but I mean, it's just like two actors that do a really good job. You can see the pain in her face, and he's I mean, I always loved Lee J. Cobb. I think he's a great actor. During this time, he was also going to Italy and getting them paychecks, but yeah, I mean, it's he's just such a strong presence, and it's like people like his character that really just have very small roles in the film. I feel like the fact that I can still remember them and remember scenes that they're in, I mean, like, it's just such a well-acted, textured, rich film in terms of just the performances and stuff.
I agree. No, I mean, that's the other scene I highlighted.
Okay, so you did highlight that one too.
Yeah, no, yeah. I highlighted that because I think that's it's one of the more tense scenes. I mean, he's a detective. He's searching for who killed the director of the film she was shooting. I'm trying to remember now the name. Dennings. So he's there looking, because Dennings basically, this film only has 3 deaths. The first one being Dennings. And Dennings was, you never saw him dying. All you know is that he was found at the bottom of the stairs,
right,
on Elm Street, and his head was completely
turned around.
And this has happened already after the church itself was vandalized by putting tits and blood on a statue of Virgin Mary. So the detective is thinking there's some foul play, and he realizes that the closest place to the stairs was that house. So he's there investigating the murder of this man. And the mother, Miss McNeil, already had figured out or was suspecting that the daughter killed the man.
Right. And they're having that conversation, but without directly saying it, too. So, I mean, it's a really well-written scene, too.
Yeah. And the detective at this moment is not suspecting that a 12-year-old girl would kill a man.
Mm-hmm.
But the mother knew that she did. And that's what makes the acting so powerful, is her holding her tears, her being polite, and the man being, yeah, I'll get another cup of coffee, on her face of horror, because she's like, just leave, just fucking leave.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have those little elements that have been put in the movie already on that scene. The daughter would like to make sculptures and little art. They kept on becoming more and more similar to the figures, the demonic figures around the end. So he noticed that because he found one of those figures on the dead body, and he noticed some of that from the daughter. And before, they already were showing you the daughter doing those things, but in the background, like, oh look, I did this thing, and the mom would be like, oh, how pretty, and you're like, is that pretty? That looks fucking demonic as hell.
Right.
It's it's one of those. I don't know. I think it was a very powerful scene, and it definitely showcased both McNeil's acting chops as well as
DJ Cobb.
Yeah, DJ Cobb's acting chops. I mean, Burstyn's acting chop and DJ Cobb's acting chops.
Yeah.
I also love the first time that DJ Cobb meets with Ferris.
Oh, yeah.
And they're back and forth.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, Cobb is such a great actor that, and everyone is in this film. I mean, I keep stating that, but it really can't be understated.
Yeah. And I mean, I like how Cobbs keeps him trying to have Karras talk about things, and Cobbs is like, hey, Karras is like, oh, so you're a psychologist. Do you know that in California, a psychologist was what was it? Like, ended up being charged for not helping out, blah, blah, blah. Karras is like, oh, okay, well, in that case, those were confessions. Are you going to go against the church? Like, because Karras that doesn't want to talk about who may or may not be the killer.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Cobb is just like, no. I mean, it just feels like a very real interaction.
Yeah. And Cobbs looks like a very, very good detective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He's like one of those that's like probing for information, but somewhat subtly.
Yeah. And now we got the medical test scenes.
Yes. Controversial too.
Controversial. You have 3 separate scenes because you're trying to figure out what's wrong with Reagan, and doctors at first they're like, oh, she's just a teenager. It'll pass. And later it's like, oh, she has this weird mental thing. Oh, okay, she might have this like block or whatever. So they have different tests. The first one is an electroencephalography. The second one is an angiography, and the third one is a pneumoencephalography. And I believe that none of those things are done today, but they were done back then. And this film is I consider actually being very accurate on showing these 3 different procedures, and they all look terrifying.
Yeah, they do. I think the angiography is the most controversial of those, where the needle is inserted into her neck. At least that's what's shown on Wikipedia to me. Yeah, I mean, like the sound design during these 2, I mentioned it earlier. It's very industrial. I do love how procedural the film is when it comes to not just the doctor scene, the medical scenes, but also like kind kind of like the Catholic Church and how they have to go through like a certain process in
Oh,
order
yeah.
to authorize the exorcism. But like in the doctor scenes and stuff, how we see it go. I mean, I like how. I mean, obviously she's a woman of great means, but like some of those scenes where it like becomes her surrounded by a bunch of people in white coats and stuff like that. I think it's just really effective. But anyways, sorry. Back
No,
to
no,
the
for sure.
angiography.
Yeah, I agree.
yeah.
I think the entire medical process, I agree with you that how systematically everything is done to try to figure out what she has is it's kind of fascinating, and you sort of start understanding a little bit of the process and what it would be for a parent who's seeing her daughter go fucking crazy, because that's what she's
Right.
seeing. And none of these procedures are comfortable. So the angiography is controversial because they basically injected something through her jugular in the neck, which I think by then the procedure was actually done on the arm, but whatever. The whole point is that was perhaps controversial, but to be honest, that in comparison to the last thing, the pneumocephalography, where she's like, I don't even know where they're puncturing her, but she's screaming out of pain on a machine that's just making a shit ton of noise. I think that, to me, was perhaps the most terrifying thing. And again, it's like this girl who is already going through extreme pain by being just possessed.
I mean, yeah, literally.
and then you add this, and I looked up on Wikipedia whether or not that procedure is painful, and Wikipedia says hell yes. No, I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Uh-huh. No, that's literally the Wikipedia answer. It's like, is this painful? Hell yes.
So I mean, if we talk about horror, just looking at medical procedures of the 70s is fucking horrific as hell. And going a little bit onto basically modern films today, or not even that modern anymore, but this actually set a standard, because later you would see this in many other movies. I can think of Nightmare on Elm Street, where you also have parents basically testing their daughter because she doesn't want to go to sleep, and they force her to go to sleep. And you have like a doctor scene too. I think it just sort of became standard to have a doctor scene in this kind of movie, especially when dealing with children.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean they really spend time with it in this film too. It's like there are, like the first half of the film, there are so many medical scenes with the doctor, and then eventually it graduates to a psychiatrist. And you think you and I might forget, but like at that time too, like psychiatry and stuff like that is not as accepted as it was today. So it was like moving forward towards a psychiatrist would have been quite a big step at that time.
Oh, I thought it was psychology that was not fully accepted.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'm misspeaking. But like they make a big deal of that in Abby, which is the blaxploitation one too.
Oh,
the psychiatrist. Yeah.
Because in this one, I'm pretty sure in this one actually it was these were psychiatrists and doctors, because psychiatrists are the ones with MD usually.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And a psychologist does not necessarily have an MD. So these were neurosurgeons and psychiatrists, and then at the end is when they have them meet with a psychologist. And you're right. I mean, they make a big deal out of that. But a psychologist is basically because they were saying like, okay, she's fucking crazy and we don't know how to fix this. And psychologist goes there and does hypnosis. And that's when Reagan basically almost kills the psychologist.
Right.
And
Yeah.
And starts swearing and saying fucked up shit. Which then, she ramps it up into the next scene that we're going to talk about, which is what I call the fuck me Jesus scene.
Yeah.
Holy fuck.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I mean, you can set the scene on this one.
I mean, there's like a number of shock moments like this that are all quite brief, but are just like, that still just hold up as far as being shocking. It's like I feel like, you know, maybe this is what I was talking about when I was talking about Rosemary's Baby versus this. It's just like it's like Friedkin was really willing to just put it all out there as far as these scenes go, and they're really short, but like they're so memorable that you just don't forget them. So yeah, it's like stuff like that. I mean, the walking backwards spider leg scene too. But yeah.
I mean, to me, if we were to talk about any scene at all where, you know, you would be like, wow, how did this get an R rating and not something more? This is it, not the backward spider scene. But this is where you have a 12-year-old girl, because the actor's still a 12-year-old girl, although voiced by Eileen Dietz, who is not credited in the film. But you have this girl who is straight up stabbing her vagina with a crucifix while yelling, "Fuck me, Jesus, fuck me." And then when the mother comes in and sees her, she's like, "What the hell are you doing?" She pulls her mother onto her crotch. I'm sorry, how the fuck did this make it to a movie? to like rated R?
Yeah. And whose idea was this? Was it Blatty's? Was it Friedkin's? I don't know.
This is in the book. This is in the book. Apparently, the book it gets even worse. But I mean, the whole point is like, you know, she's just cussing. She's cussing. She's grabbing the mother. That's the moment where shit starts levitating and moving around. This is the scene where you got the spinning head as well, which. You know, super effective. They use a mannequin, but it's still very effective. And also the scene where the mother almost gets killed by the cabinet that moves magically by itself. And before that, of course, she had been punched by the daughter and flew and hit the wall. And guess what? Remember the scene she got injured for life?
That one?
That was the scene.
I don't know if that's good or bad that like the scene that she got injured actually was like one that like really punches literally, but or
well,
yeah,
she didn't get injured because of the punch. It's because she had a pulley that pulled her onto the wall.
I see.
And she, unlike a professional stunt artist, a stunt performer, she was not fully trained for this. She got injured.
Yeah.
She got almost hit by a cabinet. But I mean, this is a scene I feel like if I was in theaters in the 70s with, you know, oh, the worst movie I've seen is Rosemary's Baby, where someone is, you know, looking, just crying, why his eyes, why do they look like this? For going from that to this, where you know, bleeding crotch, fuck me Jesus, and almost killing a woman, killing her mother. Yeah, this is fucking terrifying and startling.
Takes it up a couple notches. Yeah. Turns up that temperature just a little bit. Yeah, I mean, these scenes too are probably why this is like, you know, they're like well regarded by, it's like a real horror movie fans stuff too. Mm-hmm. It's also like, I mean, you had mentioned in our aborted attempt to do this podcast last time that like your dad had seen this, and like at that point it's like people were going to have fun. To watch the film, and these scenes are the reason why too, because like, yeah, they hold up well. They're horrific, but they're also kind of fun and a little cheesy in a fun way, in a way that I like too. And like, you know, you kind of need that in order to be a fairly rewatchable film, which I would say The Exorcist might not be the most rewatchable horror movie, but I'm happy to rewatch it every few years. So
yeah, I think it was rewatchable enough. In fact, I think the horror is what makes it rewatchable, because the other stuff is just so depressing.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just too dour. So it's kind of a weird comment to say, but I mean, I do feel like those kind of change the tenor of the film in a way that makes it different and a little more fun.
Mm-hmm. And the other part, the other scene I think is the other scene scene that I watch is then when Reagan and Father Karras meet for the first time, and that's when she tells him she's the devil, and what was it? Your mother sucks dick in hell, things like that. Lots of very memorable words. But what is fun about that is that the devil is actually quite playful. Like when in their first encounter, she almost teases him, and
literally she's talking shit.
And he's like, all right, well, are you really the devil? Are you gonna move things by yourself? And he's like, oh, I don't want to show up my powers right now. I mean, she can do it too, and it's just like there's a back and forth banter that is quite fun, and not very aggressive. And at that point, he's not taking the whole thing too seriously because he's trying to figure out whether or not.
Right. I mean, he does not believe it's an exorcism. He does not believe that it's a possession at that point. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this priest is a man of science. He went to Harvard and MIT or a bunch of other, fancy schools.
Right.
Which he repeats a couple times.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a priest, but he's having a crisis of faith, too. So, it's like, he is definitely not someone that's going to gullibly believe it immediately.
Well, and also the movie itself establishes that the whole practice of exorcism even is looked down upon within the Catholic Church. And in fact, I mean, as you mentioned, the whole procedural, the whole procedural process of getting it admitted meant getting the process accepted by the church required him to be recording her saying things, seeing like some of the crazy shit that he ended up seeing, and he had to basically convince the head of the church in Georgetown to basically call the Vatican in order to get the go-ahead. So I mean, it's an entire process.
Yeah. There's a procedural element to it on the Catholic side as well.
Exactly, because they want to keep it hidden.
Right.
But it was, but again, it was fun. It's the scenes where Karras and Reagan are together are fun to watch. I like when she pukes the green shit, the green goo onto his face, the pea soup.
Yeah. Side note, but in the Italian Antichrist, they have the pea soup one, and then they make basically the Karras character lick it up.
Gross.
It is pretty gross, but they're the Italians, they go there.
Of course. So yeah, that's pretty fun, and so I mean that's one of the fun scenes for me. Then before we get to the actual exorcism, which is best, I want to highlight the Karras' dreams. Because again, it brings back all the little elements, and the dream is one where I think I completely forgot about that scene, but it's just so well made, where you have a mix between quick cuts of this demon with a cross falling, like a crucifix, falling, along with him in across the street from a busy street in New York where he can see his mother. And in the film, the mother already had died. And she seems lost. And he's like, Mom, come here. And they can never connect. And he just does a really good job at showing all his basic struggles. In just one scene, he basically can see the demon, but at this point, he can feel losing his faith. And he can see his mother going away. Which is important because the mother is a big part of a big theme of this. He feels guilty that he feels that he caused his mother's death, which later is brought in the exorcism itself.
Right. I mean, the demon keeps, or the devil keeps bringing it up to him. I mean, that's where it kind of plays into the main story.
And in fact, I mean, that's one of the moments where he first considers, first starts suspecting that she is possessed by the devil or some sort of demon, because she references his mother, your mother sucks dick, Like in hell. And then later on, she calls him a priest, and he's wearing, like civilian clothing when they first met.
Mm-hmm.
So those two things. So, anyways, the exorcism.
Yes.
I mean, this starts basically almost like a superhero movie. You get Father Miller arriving.
Marin.
No,
Father Marin.
Marin, sorry, Father Marin arriving. You got that beautiful shot that will make it to your, the box of the DVD. Him getting off the taxi, and you just see his silhouette on his little briefcase, front of the house. You get your little music that really sets the tone, and it's like, oh, he just got to DC. He's gonna rest. Oh no, hell no! He's gonna go and do an exorcism right now.
Yeah. And I like how even in just like the brief moments of dialogue that and Max von Sydow, of course, a strong actor as well. It's just like we kind of establish like he's not like a deadly serious guy. He has kind of a slightly playful tone to him too when he's talking to them and talking about like whiskey and like how does he want some alcohol or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So I like how they establish that very efficiently. But yes, the showdown. I mean. It's like the atmosphere in terms of him getting there, and like as you said, that classical shot, and as we talked about, just like how cold that room seems and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's just I mean, it's like one of those scenes where you just can't take your eyes away. Yeah,
and it's intense. I mean, it's already explained that priests die in this procedure somehow.
Yeah, and two die.
And then at the end, you're like, oh, now I understand how they die.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is where basically you have everything coming in. You have basically the entire pain of the priest comes in. The ghost literally starts using the voice of his mother to fuck with him. After he's told, like, oh no, you cannot believe, like, you cannot listen to what the demon is saying. You should not talk to the demon because the demon will fuck with your brain. And it's just especially when the ghost like changes his voice. Oh, the demon changes his voice to his mother. Starts talking to him, and the priest just cries, and Marin is like, get the fuck out of here, I'll just do this by myself, basically.
Yeah,
it's just
and I mean, it works. The demon does its magic, and then Marin dies, and and Miller or the Karras has to do what he's got to do in order to get rid of the demon,
which is choke the demon.
Yeah.
I don't know. It is funny because before everything, like doing, it's very procedural, like with prayers and Reagan just flying up the air and tossing like holy water and all that, and everything seems to be working, but not really. and after Father Marion dies, Karras literally goes and starts choking the girl.
Yeah. Well, it literally goes to shit. I mean, the Exorcist playbook, I think, is out the window at that point.
Yeah. But he sacrifices himself, which is again another scene where it's almost a scene of redemption, because he's guilty that his mother died. This is why he's doing this right now. And he tells the demon, take me, leave this girl alone. And after that happens, he's strong enough to kill himself, and as we presume, kill the demon along with him.
Yes.
I think that's well done. I think thematically works well. Visually,
for sure,
the entire process is beautiful, especially when she's levitating.
Yeah.
Also, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention too that like Catholic and suicide are big things, of
Indeed.
course.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't even think of that. Yes. So So yeah, it's in a way the demon won, in that it ended up taking two priests
Yeah.
in one go.
And it's a demon, so it's not like it's gone forever.
Yeah, and I going back to it, that was probably one of the things that to me was most terrifying. Just that concept that it took a little girl, it left the little girl while killing two priests along the way, and a shitty director.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, yeah. I mean, one of the things that is also interesting upon reflection of Exorcist and ripoffs is like the teenage girl. The fact that they cast, 12-year-olds, I guess, so not even teenage, so a young girl,
A preteen.
as the person that gets possessed, and just about all of the ripoffs, not every single one. I think there's one I can remember that it's a kid. It's a woman instead, like a full-grown woman, that is like the person that actually gets possessed. So maybe a little bit more. No, I guess not Rosemary's Paper, but a little bit more in that direction too. And the fact is, like, it's really probably very, very hard to get a kid that is going to be really, really good in this role, because it's hard to find good child actors. But Linda Blair, who we haven't really talked about too much yet, is really good in the role, and the voices they do over her, which are not her, really work very well too. So
Yeah.
I mean, they absolutely nailed that part, and I think the degree of difficulty for nailing that part and casting it correctly is super high.
Linda Blair, I think, she had to do a lot of physical acting, especially when she is possessed. Before that, she's. I don't know if she was an amazing actor. I think in the scenes where she is, the scenes where she's in pain, she's really good. In the scenes where she's basically full of rage and attacking people, she's really good. The scenes where she's like more normal and she's just like being, a little girl.
She's fine.
She's fine. I wouldn't say she was like. I mean, obviously, I'm being an asshole by judging a child acting, but at the same time, like, I wouldn't say like she was amazing. I wouldn't say she was bad. I think her role is being a cute little girl. She does that role well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put it this way: if you mess up the casting of that role, the movie just doesn't work very well.
Yeah, no, you needed someone. You needed a child whose parents would allow them to do all the physical acting that she ended up doing.
Yes.
And also that the child would be willing to do. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think she did a lot of physical acting, and along with the voice and everything else, it looked exhausting. It looked really good. But I mean, yeah, and I think had it been with different parents, or actually a lesser an actress that was less willing to do this, yeah, perhaps you're right. Like, things would have been different. Now, one thing I wanted to mention before we finish is the inspiration of the book. So the film is very, very it doesn't change much the stuff from the actual novel. Okay, from everything I've read, the film and the novel are very similar. It cuts a couple of things off, but it's very faithful to it. The novel itself is actually inspired by notes and records from a priest who observed an exorcism back in the 1940s, and it's called The Exorcism of Roland Doe. Except for instead of being a preteen girl, it was a teenage boy who basically was possessed, or presumably possessed, after playing with a Ouija. With a Ouija board, and he basically a team of priests had to exorcise him after he was after the psychologist or psychiatrist couldn't figure out what the fuck was wrong with him. And the case happened actually not in DC but very near DC in Maryland.
Okay.
And, so, which actually makes sense. Maryland is more Catholic than DC, so it is plausible that that's perhaps part of the inspiration. And one thing that is interesting is how the novel actually is also very faithful from the set of events that happened in the 1940s records of this exorcism, including the Ouija board. Like, I mean, this film kind of has it as a side thing, but it's there. She's playing Ouija by herself because, you know, she's a really lonely girl. And she's playing with this Captain Howdy ghost, who may or may not be the monster that possessed her. And that switch between a teenage boy to that preteen girl, I think, is what makes it terrifying. And I think going back to the rip-offs that you've seen, in which there are adult women, there's something about being a little girl, or it could have been a little boy too, but there's something about that, you know, the innocence of a preteen or just a child, that makes it perhaps more unnerving, especially with the language.
Yeah. I mean, and I mean, not to mention, it's just like you feel Ellen Burstyn's pain, like through like the unknown as she's like waiting, like just knowing something's wrong with her kid, but like having no idea what, and like just assembling a team of doctors and they still have no fucking idea.
Exactly. Yeah. And also having the team of doctors dismiss it at first right away because guess what? Preteens are fucking difficult as hell. Like
yeah, it's true. Like, I mean, they're not wrong.
Yeah, because teenagers, they're already figuring their shit out. I mean, lots of people say that teenagers are shitty, but in reality, the preteen age years is the one where they're like really kind of, what are they? They're figuring like and I mean, that's why all the doctors are dismissing the whole thing at the beginning.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to point that out, like that key change, and then of course making it a girl. Some would say that it's perhaps because, you know, especially back then, it's considered like the weaker sex, in the sense that like, so making her even more fragile to the thing, to this whole circumstance.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. Yeah. But yeah. Anyways, what how do you rate this film?
I think for me, this film is a solid 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I think it's either 9.5 or 10.
Yeah.
It's
just a really good movie. I think it holds up still super well too. I mean, I want to also leave us with this fact too. If you look up the top lifetime adjusted grosses in films, The Exorcist is still number 9, making the equivalent of $1.011 billion for today. So,
is there any other film rated R that is higher than that? Is ranked higher?
Let's see. Above it are Gone with the Wind, Star Wars, Sound of Music, E.T., Titanic, Ten Commandments, Jaws, and Dr. Zhivago. So Jaws is PG, so that'd be the only other one that would even have a chance. So yeah, no, I believe it's easily the highest R.
Damn. There you go. Yeah. And apparently, I was reading that even without adjusting the film, it got surpassed very recently without the adjustment for inflation.
Yeah, which is insane. I mean, this film was 1973.
Yeah. I mean, and not that a popular film doesn't equate to good quality. I mean, Avatar is highly popular.
True.
It's not a bad movie. Not a great movie.
Yeah. Also true. Yeah.
But this film, I think, what it does to horror is, again, I hate the term elevated horror. I think more than there's elevated horror and not elevated horror, I think there's a lot of shitty horror, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the films which says like, no, horror films can be fucking amazing. And this is one of them.
Also, one of the rare examples where the critics actually liked it at the time it was released. So, there you go.
There you go.
A rare W for the critics of horror.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, next time we're going to do The Exorcism 2, right? Because I hear that's another amazing film.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I mean, it would be fun at one point to talk about The Exorcist 3, which is directed by Blatty, which is kind of a fun one.
Yeah.
But, a very different film from this one, too.
I know. All right, who won?
As much as I'd like to put him in the penalty box for his poor behavior, I got to give it to William Friedkin.
I'm actually between Burstyn and Miller. I think they both really shine on many moments. Yeah. I mean, to me, one of some of the best, some of the scenes that I didn't even talk about, but whenever he's leading the mass, and his face full of pain because he's just like he's completely like losing faith while he's leading mass.
Yeah.
That's a really good job. But I'm gonna give it to actually Ellen Burstyn. That scene you highlighted to me was one of the best scenes. Just her face as she's trying to hide her daughter from the detective. Just her acting, holding her tears.
Yeah.
Just very good.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's totally worthy.
Yeah. And what would be your souvenir?
Oh, Jesus. Oh, man. I have not thought about this. My mind immediately went to the crucifix, but why the hell would I want that?
You have to clean it first.
Yeah. The artifact representing Pazuzu, no thank you. Don't want that. Oh, man. I'll just take a little bit of holy water,
A little bit of holy water, just in case.
Yeah.
I actually would keep the demonic artifact. I think they're kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as they don't possess you.
Yeah, we'll have to ask our friend the actuary, what the likelihood of demonic possession is once you own one of those. Yeah. You can look it up in this spreadsheet.
Ooh, last fact before we finish though. The two weird fun facts. One is the head of the church was actually the head of Georgetown.
That's right. Yeah.
He was a priest.
I did hear that. Yeah.
And he was pretty upset when he saw Friedkin slapping the actor that was pretending to be a priest. He actually got pretty upset about it. The other thing is one of the radiographers from the medical scene actually many of those radiographers were real doctors. And one of them was Dr. Paul Battison, who later got convicted for killing a journalist.
Jesus.
Yeah. Fun trivia there.
Yeah, that's totally fun trivia.
And I guess the last one thing is, it is literally impossible to fall off the window onto the stairs in real life in Georgetown. So the way they shot this was they built the front of a house right in front of the stairs to shoot that, to make it seem like that would be possible.
Okay, there you go.
Fun fact.
Yeah, shout outs to our friend Nathaniel.
Yeah, there you go. Anyways,
all right.
But yeah, now if you go to Georgetown, you can visit those stairs, and interestingly enough, they're not filled with tourists or anything like that. So.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah. All right. That's it for me. That's it for you, I think.
Yep.
So once again, thank you for listening. I think this has been one of our longer episodes. If you have any suggestions, any comments, any shout outs, whatever, you can always tweet at us or at ZA Film to Film, and that would be ZA Film to Film with a number 2. Or you can email us at zafilmtofilm@gmail.com. We also got a YouTube channel, which I believe is also ZA Film to Film.
Yep.
Where we upload the same audios on perhaps we might be uploading like little quickies for films that we have just seen to give our first impression. I'm not promising this, but it may happen.
It might happen. There are rumors on the internet.
There are rumors. I saw it on Reddit. Anything else to add?
Nope, that's it from me.
All right. Well, then, till next time. Ciao.
Ciao.